In the ancient world, long before modern democracies emerged, a revolutionary system of government arose from the deserts and mountains of Persia. This wasn't just another empire built on conquest and tribute. The Persians created something entirely different, a sophisticated bureaucracy that would influence civilizations for over 1,000 years. At its heart was a brilliant paradox. Absolute power at the center, yet remarkable freedom at the edges. The emperor commanded from his throne, but governors administered their provinces with considerable autonomy. This delicate balance would prove to be one of history's most enduring governmental innovations. The roots of this system reached back centuries before the Persians themselves rose to prominence. In the 24th century before the Common Era, Sargon of Akkad forged the world's first multicultural empire. He faced a challenge no ruler had confronted before: how to govern dozens of diverse cities, each with its own customs and traditions. Sargon's solution was ingenious. He appointed trusted administrators known as citizens of Akkad to govern in his name. These officials weren't local leaders but loyal servants of the crown, reporting directly to Sargon. To strengthen his control further, he even placed his own daughter, Enheduanna, as high priestess in the city of blending religious authority with political power. Sargon's model worked brilliantly. He established a network of inspectors who would make surprise visits to cities, ensuring governors remained loyal and efficient. This created a stable environment where roads could be built, cities improved, and even a postal system developed. The Akkadian Empire eventually fell, but its governmental blueprint survived, remembered, and studied by future rulers. Centuries later, the Assyrians would rediscover these ancient techniques and refine them into something even more sophisticated. They understood that Sargon had discovered a fundamental truth: trust alone wasn't enough to govern an empire, you needed systems of oversight and accountability. The Neo-Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III revolutionized imperial administration in the 8th century before the Common Era. Originally a provincial governor himself, he seized power through a coup, killing the weak king Ashur-Narari V. Having seen firsthand how dangerous powerful governors could be, Tiglath-Pileser immediately set about preventing anyone from doing to him what he'd done to his predecessor. He cut the size of provinces in half, creating 25 smaller regions instead of 12 large ones. Smaller provinces meant governors controlled fewer resources and fewer troops, making rebellion far more difficult. But Tiglath-Pileser went further with an innovation that seemed harsh but proved remarkably effective. He made all his governors eunuchs, ensuring they could never establish family dynasties that might challenge imperial authority. He also instituted a dual command system. Each province had 2 governors who both had to agree before any major policy could be enacted. Finally, he borrowed from Sargon's playbook, creating an intelligence network of trusted administrators who would arrive unannounced to inspect provinces. This system of checks and balances kept the Assyrian Empire stable and powerful for over a century. When the Assyrian Empire finally collapsed in 612 before the Common Era, it fell to a coalition led by the Medes and Babylonians. The victors didn't just destroy the Assyrians, they systematically demolished their temples and smashed statues of their gods. The hatred ran deep, fueled by Assyrian policies of mass deportation that had uprooted entire populations. Yet even as they destroyed Assyrian cities, the Medes quietly adopted the satrapy system the Assyrians had perfected. It was simply too effective to abandon. The governmental structure outlived the empire that created it, waiting to be claimed by the next great conqueror. That conqueror was Cyrus the Great, and he would transform Persian administration into something unprecedented. Around 550 before the Common Era, Cyrus overthrew the Medes and began building what would become the largest empire the world had ever seen. But Cyrus was more than a brilliant general, he was a visionary leader who understood that conquest was easy but holding an empire together was the real challenge. He had studied the failures of the Akkadians and Assyrians, learning from their mistakes. The Assyrians' policy of forced deportation had created nothing but resentment. Cyrus would do the opposite. Cyrus's approach to governance was revolutionary in its tolerance and pragmatism. Conquered peoples were allowed to remain in their homes, practice their religions, and maintain their customs. He famously freed the Jews from Babylonian captivity and even helped fund the rebuilding of their temple in Jerusalem. This wasn't weakness, it was brilliant strategy. A grateful population was a loyal population. All Cyrus asked in return was payment of taxes, provision of troops when needed, and peaceful coexistence among different groups. He took the Assyrian satrapy system but removed its harshest elements, creating a government that ruled through respect rather than fear. The administrative structure Cyrus created combined centralization with decentralization in a way never before achieved. At the top stood the emperor, wielding absolute authority. Just below him were high officials and advisors who helped formulate policy. Then came the secretaries who kept the bureaucratic machinery running smoothly. The empire itself was divided into satrapies, each governed by a Persian satrap responsible for civilian administration. Crucially, military command was kept separate, under a general who answered directly to the emperor. This split prevented any single official from having enough power to rebel successfully. Cyrus also maintained the intelligence network pioneered by Sargon and refined by the Assyrians. Officials known as the eyes and ears of the king would travel throughout the empire, appearing without warning to inspect provinces and ensure satraps were governing fairly and honestly. These inspectors had direct access to the emperor and wielded considerable authority. The system worked so well that there are no recorded revolts during Cyrus's reign, a remarkable achievement for an empire spanning multiple continents. The conquered peoples didn't just tolerate Persian rule, many came to call Cyrus father, a title of deep respect and affection. Cyrus died in battle around 530 before the Common Era, and his son Cambyses II extended the empire into Egypt. Though later Greek and Egyptian sources portrayed Cambyses as harsh and erratic, this likely reflects the bias of those who opposed him. One story illustrates his approach to justice, however severe it may have been. When the royal judge Sassanian was caught accepting a bribe, Cambyses had him executed and flayed. The judge's skin was then used to upholster the chair where his son, appointed as the new judge, would sit to deliver verdicts. A gruesome reminder that justice must be impartial and corruption would not be tolerated. When Darius I seized power in 522 before the Common Era, he brought Persian administration to its pinnacle. Known as Darius the Great, he instituted a comprehensive law code called the Ordinance of Good Regulations, influenced by the earlier Code of Hammurabi. One revolutionary provision declared that not even the king could execute someone for a single offense. Instead, a person's entire record of service had to be weighed against their crimes before punishment could be determined. This principle of proportional justice was far ahead of its time and showed remarkable restraint for an absolute monarch. Darius applied his own law code when the judge Sandoses was found guilty of accepting bribes. Initially sentenced to crucifixion, Sandoses was saved when Darius reconsidered his own legal principles. Weighing the judge's years of honest service against his single crime, Darius pardoned him and made him a provincial governor instead. This wasn't weakness but adherence to the rule of law, even when it meant reversing his own decisions. Such examples of measured justice helped legitimize Persian rule in the eyes of conquered peoples and demonstrated that the empire's laws applied to everyone, including those in power. Darius reorganized the entire empire into 7 major regions, then divided these into 20 satrapies for more efficient administration. Each satrapy had not one but 3 key officials. The satrap handling civilian matters, a royal secretary assisting the satrap but reporting to Darius, and a royal treasurer overseeing government spending. The military remained separate under a garrison commander who had soldiers but no access to treasury funds. This system of overlapping authorities created checks and balances that prevented any single official from accumulating enough power to threaten the throne. Beyond these provincial officials, Darius maintained the royal inspectors who traveled without announcement to verify honest governance. He also established committees of trusted men who assessed taxes and registered citizens, ensuring taxation was fair and all revenue reached the imperial treasury. This multi-layered system of oversight made corruption difficult and rebellion nearly impossible. The Achaemenid model of government was now complete, a sophisticated bureaucracy that combined the wisdom of centuries with innovative new protections. It would serve successive empires in the region for over 1,000 years with remarkably little modification. When Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire in 330 before the Common Era, one of his generals, Seleucus I, established the Seleucid Empire using the Achaemenid governmental model. However, Seleucus made a critical error. He placed Greeks in most positions of power throughout the provinces. This policy bred resentment among local populations who saw themselves as ruled by foreign occupiers rather than partners in empire. After Seleucus's death, his successors faced numerous rebellions as conquered peoples chafed under what they perceived as cultural imperialism. Among those who rebelled were the Parthians, who broke away in 247 before the Common Era under their first king, Arsaces I. The Parthians were too busy establishing their independence to revolutionize government, so they simply adopted the Achaemenid model that had worked for centuries. Later Parthian rulers modified the system by dividing their empire into Upper Parthia and Lower Parthia, then further into provinces. Unlike the Achaemenids, however, the Parthians often allowed client kings to remain on their thrones, governing in the empire's name. This policy encouraged continuity and local loyalty, but sometimes backfired when ambitious client kings allied with enemies like Rome. The Parthian system's looser administration eventually contributed to its downfall. In 224 of the Common Era, a vassal king named Ardashir I overthrew the last Parthian ruler and founded the Sassanian Empire. Ardashir was a devout Zoroastrian, and he saw government not just as administration but as a divine mission. He believed in 5 core principles: that the supreme god Ahura Mazda was all good, his opponent Ahriman was all evil, goodness manifested through good thoughts, words, and deeds, and each person had free will to choose between good and evil. These religious principles would now shape Persian government for the first time. Ardashir returned to the centralized Achaemenid model, tightening control over provinces and eliminating the problematic client-king system. Zoroastrianism became the state religion, and government officials were expected to honor its beliefs and practices. However, this didn't mean persecution of other faiths, at least not initially. His son Shapur I welcomed Jews, Buddhists, and Christians to build places of worship throughout the empire. Shapur saw himself as a holy warrior advancing Zoroastrian truth against the darkness embodied by the Roman Empire. But he understood that religious tolerance strengthened rather than weakened the state. Religious tolerance wavered under later rulers. Shapur II, who ruled from 309 to 379 of the Common Era, saw Christianity as a political threat because of its association with Rome. During his reign, Christians faced persecution, though other faiths remained protected. This was more about geopolitics than religious conviction, an attempt to prevent what he saw as Roman infiltration through religious conversion. After Shapur II died, tolerance was quickly restored. The greatest Sassanian king, Khosrau I, known as Anushirvan the Just, returned fully to the principles of Ardashir and Shapur I, emphasizing education, cultural refinement, and equal justice under law. The Sassanian Empire maintained the Achaemenid governmental model through its final days, even as nobles periodically asserted autonomy in various regions during the 7th century. When Muslim Arabs conquered the empire in 651 of the Common Era, they too recognized the effectiveness of the basic system: centralized decree from a single ruler implemented by provincial governors. However, the Arabs eventually abandoned the policy of religious tolerance that had been Persian government's greatest strength, requiring non-Muslims to pay special taxes and encouraging forced conversion. The governmental structure survived, but the spirit of inclusive rule that made it work so well was diminished. The legacy of Persian government extended far beyond Persia itself. From approximately 550 before the Common Era through 651 of the Common Era, over 1100 years, the Achaemenid model provided stable administration across one of the world's most diverse regions. It influenced the Roman Empire's governmental structure, which in turn shaped European political development for centuries. The basic concept remains visible today. Centralized policy-making with decentralized implementation, separation of military and civilian authority, systems of oversight and accountability, and professional bureaucracy independent of personal loyalty. The ancient Persians understood fundamental truths about governing that still resonate in modern democracies. Enjoyed learning about the Persian governmental system that shaped history? Give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more fascinating deep dives into ancient civilizations. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next historical journey. Got a favorite Persian ruler or ancient empire you'd like us to explore? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.